Hello book lovers, welcome to Uncommon Reader. My name is Daniela, here to tell you all about what remains of my February reads. I've started talking about them during my February favorites, highlighting Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and then I did a dedicated video to Orbital by Samantha Harvey, Booker Prize winner in 2024. And now let's close the circle with the 5 overreads, and I'm going to try to be as concise as possible, looking at my notes as well. Let's start with 2 D and F books. The first book is Still Life by Sarah Winman. And this book tells the story of 2 characters. We have Ulysses, who is a British soldier, an ally of the American troops that are advancing in Italy. By the way, we are in Tuscany in 1944, and so he's helping the Americans advance and defeat the Nazis. Ulysses meets with Evelyn, who is an art historian trying to save some art that belonged to the Tuscany churches. And so they meet and they form quite a unique bond, a friendship, and they will spend a few days together. At one point they'll have to part ways, and apparently they will never meet again. And so we'll be following, at least whoever finished the whole book, both lives after the war. Ulysses goes back to London to find his past life non-existent because his wife has had a daughter with someone else. So he's sort of trying to adjust to a new life, surrounded by eccentric friends. And so that's when, for me, the book started to really slow down. One of the reasons why I also abandoned this book was I think the prose was a bit too rich. It's like it was trying too hard. And so I didn't find it compelling and gripping and interesting. And I was looking for something to come along to sort of make the plot more interesting, and nothing was happening, so I just decided to give it up. I did go online because I was curious to see, well, am I missing something, not finishing this book? So I went through the whole summary of what the book was about and how it ends, but I feel like I didn't miss anything at all. So there you have it, or Still Life, a no for me. The other DNF book was Sacré, Bleu by Christopher Moore. It was supposed to be a humorous and quirky novel that blended art, history, and mystery. So I actually didn't find any of these elements in this book. The story revolves around the creation of a mysterious and almost magical color called Sacré Bleu that seemed to have a strange and potentially dangerous, poisonous power. And the novel is set in 19th century Paris, and that's why I was interested in reading this book. It's following a group of artists, including a fictionalized version of the famous painter Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, as they try to discover the mysterious death of Vincent van Gogh. So I was all into this mystery, but unfortunately, the plot in this book for me wasn't working. I didn't find the jokes funny, and it seemed to lead nowhere. It was sort of a very confused bubble with things happening, but not really leading to anywhere. So at one point, again, after 100+ pages, I decided to say, okay, this is not the representation I'd like to see of Impressionists. It felt like a little joke to me. So not for me, Sacré Bleu. On to happier ending now with Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I was drawn to this book because of the setting. Beartown is an ice hockey town, and I think the writer did a very nice description of the characters in this case, and maybe my reservation might be that he did dwell a little too long in describing the young hockey players, their families, the coach, the environment surrounding them. So it was quite descriptive. It gives you a really good sense, although, of the environment, which is a good thing. But since the book for me was 600 pages long, as I got the large print version at the library, the only copy I could find. So the first 300 pages were, I'm like, okay, I was waiting for something to happen, and which I knew it was going to happen. Something really tragic that would have changed the dynamics of the group of players and their families, changing the whole mood in the city. And so I was looking forward to that. And I have to say that when we reached that point, the book didn't disappoint, because it was really interesting and captivating to see how the mood and the characters' behavior have shifted, and their relationships started to creak and change slowly, but at the same time in a very dramatic way. I really enjoyed this read, and I think I will like to continue reading this series, perhaps not right away. The next book I want to tell you about, it's a classic. Actually, I finally got my hands on Mark Twain, but actually not my hands, my ears, because I listened to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer through an Italian app. So I listened to the book in Italian. And I have to say, I was very, very impressed by a preface done by Alessandro Portelli, who is an Italian scholar of American literature and culture, historian, and a professor of Anglo-American literature at the University in Rome. So I went and transcribed what he said in his introduction, and I wanted to share with you because it has much to do with how groundbreaking this book was for American literature. Bear with me, this is very interesting, I promise. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is a novel by Mark Twain from 1876, the first significant novel by an author who had already had a long career. Mark Twain is in some way a prototype of the American writer who has done 500 jobs, who has traveled half the world, who has been a journalist, and who, in some way, has formed his language and his writing experience precisely on the direct relationship with the world of work, of production, and with a deep bond with the territory, with the world in which he works and lives. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer marks in some way not only the artistic maturity of Mark Twain, but in some way the cultural maturity of the United States. The first great novel that takes place after the Civil War, which decisively shifts the axis of American culture from the shore of the Atlantic to the center, to the frontier, to the Mississippi Valley. It does so not only because the author comes from there, because the setting is that, but because the language is that. Until before the Civil War, the standards by which American literature is measured in some way, he says in some way a lot, is the comparison with Europe, especially with England. With Mark Twain's generation, this paradigm falls. America declares, to some extent, its cultural independence, its linguistic independence. It is no coincidence that with The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, the focus is on what later becomes one of the important figures of all American literature, the adolescent. In this case, the pre-adolescent, with its independence, with its autonomy. The book has a sensational attack, that of an adult who desperately tries to take control, to call a boy to order and fails. This difficulty in imposing order on adolescent, in imposing order on the frontier, in imposing order on this seething country that the United States has become, this difficulty is a sign of a new situation, of a new intolerance, of a new lack of defense towards authority and power. And with this book, Mark Twain is mocking literary authorities. We will see how the Count of Monte Cristo's parody of the classics of the previous generation's literature is predominant in this book, precisely because it is authority in all its form that is called into question. It is called into question above all through this discovery of a new language. Mark Twain's America is a multilingual America, and therefore all the characters each speak a different dialect. On the same level, the Black Jim, like the white boy Tom, like the other hero Huck, are all bearers of a new language that is born on American soil, a language that is not imported. And the vehicle of this language is the sense of humor. And it is the narrative tone that makes this book an important innovation. In this sense, this is a book that has kids at its center. We have all seen and experienced it as a book for kids, and it is, in an absolute decisive way. But it is something more. It is like the opening of a door towards a new writing, towards a new horizon, a new panorama, a new territory. America is expanding towards the Pacific, and Mark Twain opens the way narratively. This is a bit of a way of approaching the story in which fundamental figures and metaphors of this American literature come into play. The village, the towns, the American province, with their idyll and their hidden horror. The river, of course, the Mississippi, and then the boy. Mark Twain with Tom Sawyer paved the way for The Catcher in the Rye, Charlie Brown and Linus, The Simpsons, all these worlds where the kids are the protagonists and the adults are background figures. Well, I thought this preview was particularly illuminating, and it really made me thoroughly enjoy Tom Sawyer from start to finish. Last book for today is The Painted Veil by William Somerset Maugham, my first encounter with this author. The setting, we are in London in 1920s, and Kitty, who is the protagonist, is a woman he is desperately trying to get married, but she can't find a suitable husband. She is very, very picky until her sister gets engaged. So she, being the elderly sister, doesn't want to be left behind. So she accepts the courtship of this very shy introvert doctor, Walter, and they get married. This marriage, though, doesn't make Kitty happy. She starts to suffer the attention of her loving husband, and she will be sort of looking for distractions and will find them. Although something will happen to the couple, they will be sort of forced to move to China because of Walter accepting a job as a medical researcher in a small village affected by a cholera epidemic. And so Kitty is forced to go with him, and that's where she will sort of go through a radical change and go through a lot of soul searching, sort of shifting the balance in the couple. A very interesting development in the character, especially Kitty, is the focal point. And I think that's where Maugham was really brilliant in going into all these different phases in Kitty's state of mind, inner thoughts, and how she slowly coming to certain realizations, and also the subtlety of this underlying criticism of the superficiality of social behavior, which I think was quite brilliant from Maugham part. And in the simplicity of the story, I found that these two traits were quite a profound element in the book. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for keeping me company. Let me know if you have any thoughts on these books. I look forward to see you back here on the 20th, first day of spring, for a surprise collaboration book tag with my friend Renee of Beyond Books. See you soon, and in the meantime, happy reading. Take care. Ciao.